I'm Haley. Welcome to the whole podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show.
Here at The Whole Person, we believe everyone deserves the chance to live independently and with confidence, regardless of ability. And to make that happen, we need volunteers like you. By joining us, you'll have the opportunity to support impactful areas, from administration and event planning to hands-on roles like assisting with our blind and low vision programs or helping at our special events like the Big Dill Classic and Expressions Art Exhibition. Every role, whether it's outreach, community engagement, or even offering pro bono professional services, makes a lasting difference. The Whole Person serves over 2,500 individuals annually, and with your help, we can make their dreams a reality. As a volunteer, you'll become part of a vibrant, supportive community dedicated to empowering people with disabilities. Our roles are flexible, meaningful, and tailored to fit your interests and expertise. Ready to make a difference? Visit thewholeperson.org/volunteer to explore our wide range of volunteer opportunities and get involved. Together, let's make independence accessible for all. Just a little of your time can lead to amazing change.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again. Just a reminder, we have Michael Kelley here from BikeWalkKC.
Howdy.
Hello. Thank you for staying with us. We really appreciate it. And I am Haley, your vision impaired host. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to just jump right into some more questions. We've got a lot of good questions. We keep talking about them. So
Yeah, of course.
we're just going to go right into this one here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So ordinance, you tell me if I'm saying this right. 190067.
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess this was a huge win for accessibility, and I know nothing about it. So could you please explain it so maybe our listeners can also get more involved and help out the community?
Yeah. So back in 2019, as the city was beginning to build out its network of bike infrastructure and especially protected, separated bike infrastructure, there were some issues with the way that the language was worded that made for some confusion
Okay.
for both the city as well as people who might be navigating it. And so we worked with then Councilwoman Jolie Justice to push for the passage of this ordinance. So for listeners, an ordinance is essentially a type of policy that a city is required to implement or follow when they adopt it. It's one of the strongest things that a city can do to adopt some sort of policy around accessibility, walkability, anything.
Okay. Okay.
And so what Ordinance 190067 essentially does is it expands the definition for who can use a bike lane in the city. So prior to this, it was essentially just two-wheel regular bicycles.
Mhm.
But with the adoption of this, BikeWalkKC pushed for the inclusion of language that says that scooter users can use it, that people with assistive mobility devices like wheelchairs and walkers can use it, people who are using electric bicycles can use
Mhm.
them,
Mhm.
but also people who may be using skateboards, as well as people who are pushing strollers. And so the reason why we wanted to do this is because, from BikeWalkKC's perspective,
Mhm.
the on-street bike lanes that you see, so places like Gillum, for example, those are what are known as quick build projects. So it's essentially, we recognize that this street is dangerous, but we
Mhm.
can't build the Cadillac trail today.
Okay.
So what
Okay.
can we build now that will get us those safety benefits while we work to get the funding and other necessary items to build that Cadillac trail?
Okay.
And so because we see this in terms of policy and in terms of why we build it, we believe at BikeWalkKC that if it's a precursor to a trail, then it should be treated as such in terms of who can use it. Because when you think about a full-blown trail, people who, if you're like at the Riverfront Heritage Trail,
Mhm.
You'll see people pushing strollers, you'll see people jogging, you'll see people riding bikes, you'll see people on skateboards. Why not have that same application for our quick build projects? Because that's eventually what we're going to get up to.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is really meant for us to be a small way that we can make it safer and easier for more people to be able to use those facilities.
Mm-hmm.
Because as you've mentioned before, what happens when someone isn't able to use a sidewalk, either because it's cracked or because it's been uprooted by a tree?
Mm-hmm.
You should still be able to use some sort of facility to get around. And so
Mm-hmm.
the bike lane is another way that we can support those needs. And it's something that we've seen happen. I was actually riding a bike several months back, and I happened to see someone who was using a motorized wheelchair along Gillum. And so I happened to strike up a conversation with them, and they said that the reason why they use it is because it's a smooth, direct path that allows them to get to their doctor. So it
Mm-hmm.
really is about expanding access to the places that people with disabilities need to get to be able to live a good quality of life in Kansas City. So we're really
Mm-hmm.
proud of that policy.
Yeah, no, I agree with that statement though, because there are some times where I will use my cane because there's more traffic that I can see.
Right.
And sometimes I do have to walk in the street just to get to where I'm trying to go. And so those areas that are more safe has really helped a lot of people because I see a lot of people utilizing them now.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Remind me again, how long have those been in effect? Because I know like they just kind of all of a sudden were there, but I can't remember when that was.
That specific policy was adopted in 2019.
Oh,
So
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So it's been in place for about 6 years at this point. Yeah.
So what has the research showed? Like a lot of people appreciate it. Is there research coming in saying this is helpful, not helpful? What does that look like for
So
you?
this is one thing where we see again why it's important to support active transportation. So we have not been able to collect specific research on the implementation of 190067, and that's largely because our city hasn't chosen to do it. And
Okay.
and so but I think it speaks to a bigger point, which is that far too often when we talk about walking or biking or transit or accessibility, it is considered an afterthought. Like think about when you
Mm-hmm.
get invited to an event, is there any consideration for like you can take this bus route to get here or
Mm-hmm.
there are going to be bike racks located here?
No.
Unless you're going, most of the time it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that also trickles into our policy and it prevents us from being able to have a broader understanding of how existing policies do or don't help us.
Okay.
And so that would just be one thing for listeners to consider is that it's not just that, Bike Walk KC advocate for this and then let it go. It's that we've
Mm-hmm.
tried to get the city to do more, to invest more, but it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. No, I
Mhm.
can understand that.
Yeah.
We just got to get the people.
Yeah.
So share this podcast, everyone. But no, yeah, we really need to come together as a community because I think there's a lot that can be done from different viewpoints. And
Mhm.
so that would be great if we could get everyone together.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Absolutely.
we can do great things.
Yes, we can.
Hmm. Okay, let me look at our next question. Are there any current policy efforts in Kansas City, Missouri, or Kansas that you're excited about in terms of accessibility and active transportation?
Yes, there's a lot going on, and I will do my best to try to highlight things because I could spend a whole nother hour talking
Love
about all
it.
this. So in Kansas City, one of the big things that we're working on this year that we're really excited about is trying to get the city to implement its road diet policy. So
Road diet.
yes,
Sorry.
road diet. So
Please
let me explain
explain.
for folks.
Yes.
So a road diet is where you intentionally narrow a street to reallocate space for other uses. So this would be things like additional parking, expanded sidewalks, bike
Okay.
infrastructure, trees. It really can run the gamut. And so the reason why we advocate for this is because the Federal Highway Administration has studied road diets to death. And
Okay.
they have found that road diets can help to lower crashes by as much as 48%. So
Okay.
when we're thinking about, excuse me, sorry, how
All good.
cities can address the issue of traffic violence,
Mhm.
instituting road diets is one of the biggest things that can be done to make our streets safer for people who walk, for people who roll, for people who bike, for people who use public transit.
Hmm.
and for drivers.
Hmm.
So that's been one big thing we're focusing on in Kansas City, Missouri.
Hmm.
In Kansas City, Kansas, one thing I'll note is that um, Kansas City, Kansas has recently embarked on developing what's known as a Vision Zero action plan. So for listeners, Vision Zero is this idea that traffic violence is a public health crisis. It is not something that happens in isolation, but it is actually the result of systemic choices that we have made that have created a more dangerous system.
Hmm.
And so, in order for us to address it, we have to look at it through a systemic lens. KCK is in the process of developing a Vision Zero action plan that will guide their efforts to eliminate traffic fatalities, especially among people who don't drive. So, we're really excited to be involved in that process. And I know the whole person is involved in that process.
Yes.
In terms of state level things, I'll highlight really quickly.
Hmm.
One
Hmm.
of the big things that Missouri is working on is um, updating what is known as their Vulnerable Road User Safety Assessment, or VERUSA.
Okay.
This was something that was required by the bipartisan infrastructure law that was adopted back in 2021, but it essentially says that every state DOT has to develop a plan or a document that essentially says what issues they're experiencing for people who walk, who bike, who roll,
Hmm.
and what specifically is the state DOT doing to address that. So,
Hmm.
BikeWalkKC evaluated Missouri and Kansas's policies, and we found that Kansas had the stronger policy.
Okay.
And our
Okay.
research kind of helped prompt MoDOT to update their policy. So we're involved in that, and we're hoping that Missouri will produce a stronger policy that comes out with stronger recommendations to make communities like Kansas City safer for people who live with disabilities, but also who walk and bike.
Hmm.
On the Kansas side, the big thing that they've been doing over the last couple of years is working to implement their statewide active transportation plan. So that is essentially the document, the high level document that is meant to guide their efforts to create a state transportation system that supports the needs of people with disabilities as well as people who walk and bike. And so BikeWalkKC was involved in the development of that process along with our partners in KCK, in Wichita, but also in smaller places like Ottawa and Southeast Kansas. Sorry, I'm blanking on the
You're
communities here.
okay. You're okay. It's a lot to remember.
um, but all of that is really important because the way that we are able to get state DOTs to cooperate with communities, because a lot of times some of the most dangerous streets in a community are actually controlled by the state.
Okay.
There has to be better coordination between the cities and the state on how to do those things. And so documents like the statewide active transportation plan make it easier for those entities to work together
Hmm.
to create a safer transportation network for you and me.
So it's allowing more of a conversation to happen,
Yes.
essentially, because
Yes.
as we know, sometimes with agencies, the conversation is just not there.
Right, right. So it very much is about getting everyone on the same page,
Hmm.
recognizing that traffic violence is an issue, but also getting us away from this idea that it is an individual responsibility. It is not, we far too often say that a crash happened and it was the pedestrian's fault
Hmm.
without doing anything to consider what was the crosswalk light, what was the lighting like,
Hmm.
how fast was the driver going when the crash occurred. All
Hmm.
of these elements play a factor in whether or not the pedestrian or the person with a disability or the person in a wheelchair is going to walk away from that crash.
Hmm.
And we have to do more about considering what those factors are and working to address them through policies, plans, and projects.
Hmm. And also, you can't forget about how many accidents happen because of people using cell phones and
Mm.
looking down and finding your lipstick that's in your purse at the bottom of your purse.
So if I can, I'd like to push back a little bit on that.
Yeah,
So
please do. Please
so
do.
so first, when we talk about traffic violence in our work, we really try to shy away from the word accident. And,
Okay.
and the reason why is because accident implies that this was something that was inevitable. It was something that just, it's the cost of doing business.
Hmm.
And we know that that's not the case. So when we talk about something that occurs, we try to use the word crash
Okay.
because it specifically speaks to the often violent nature of what occurred, but it
Hmm.
also puts the onus back on the system to demonstrate why that crash happened in the first place. Um,
Understandable. Yeah.
so, but the other thing I'll say is that there has been research done on this, and I would encourage listeners to check out the Kansas City's Vision Zero Action Plan,
Hmm.
because one of the things that they did with that is they looked at what are the things that are causing the most crashes in Kansas City. They looked at things like distracted driving, they looked at drunk driving, but they also looked at speeding.
Hmm.
Drunk driving causes about 4% of crashes. Distracted driving, so like the cell phones,
Hmm.
lipstick, and everything, only causes about 6% of crashes.
Okay.
So a very, very small point.
Yeah.
The vast majority of crashes that we see in Kansas City, and this is similar to what you'll see in other places around the country, is because of speeding.
Okay.
The way that we built our roads encourages people to go fast, but we've also built cars that are bigger and faster
Hmm.
and that make it a lot safer for the person inside the car, but much more dangerous for everyone outside of it. And
Hmm.
so that means that when a crash occurs, you're much more likely to get hit with more force that is going to lead to severe injuries,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
also increases the likelihood of death.
Okay. And yes, I am still very new to this conversation, so I appreciate you educating me on proper terminology. I would expect anyone that I'm interviewing to do that. So thank you so much.
Thank you for giving me the grace to do that.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
anytime. And with the Vision Zero, I'm still very new, so I appreciate the conversation because there's a lot of numbers at those meetings, and I'm just a girl who's trying to make sidewalks easier for vision
Right,
impaired people.
right,
So,
right. So,
thank you so much.
mhm.
Okay, so let me see if I can flip over here to our next question. Um, okay. Okay. So beyond policy, what are some of the ways BikeWalkKC works to promote accessibility and disability rights? We've talked on and off about this, but is there something more specific you'd like to share? Something that comes to mind?
I
Anything else that you'd like to add to that part of the
yeah,
conversation?
I think what I'll highlight is, we are fortunate to, beyond just the whole person, to work with groups like the local chapters of the National Federation of the Blind.
Hmm.
And so one of the things that Tony actually came to us about, and we were fortunate to work with him on, was helping him to organize a transit focused town hall to talk about these issues, which I think
I
is where,
helped
is where
with.
we met with. Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And so the reason why I highlight that is because we oftentimes, I think it's very easy to sometimes say that, Bike Walk KC only cares about bike stuff, and that's unfortunate, but it's something that we get accused of. And so we
Hmm.
do this work because we want to be able to be supportive of other issues. We recognize that walking and biking are only part of the transportation system, and a lot of times when we're talking about transit, it's part of that kind of first mile, last mile element. And what I mean by that is you can take the bus to get to a bus stop, but when it comes to actually getting to your destination, you still are going to need a sidewalk, a bike lane, a
Hmm.
trail to get up to that specific spot.
Yep.
And so we often see this work as all interconnected. Like, we can't have just good walkability or just good bikeability. We also have to have good transit. And so we wanted to support those efforts because it is part of how we create a better transportation system, and gets back to that original idea of being able to not have to drive in order to thrive.
Hmm.
So that's something that we advocate for. But we also work through some of our statewide partners to support things like the area plan on aging. So that's one of the things that MoDOT is in the process of doing, is updating their plan on aging. So how do you support the needs of people as they get older, and
Yeah.
that oftentimes intersects with areas of disability. And so one of the things that our statewide partners have done, and Bike Walk KC has tried to support, is um, being involved in elements around how do we make sure people know about this plan? How do they know
Hmm.
about surveys? How do they know
Hmm.
who to contact or where to get involved? So those are some of the elements that we also work to try to support through these efforts.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that because I was just about to say, how is this information being communicated to the public?
Hmm.
Because honestly, I don't know if I've seen or known what I was looking at when that information is coming out. So,
Right.
yeah, that's a hard task.
Yeah. So and I'll say, that we are not 100% perfect in this. There are certainly times where we miss something or we drop the
Yeah.
ball. I will be the first person to own up to that.
It's life.
But will also say that, we're the reason why it's also important for us to partner with groups like the Whole Person and the National Federation of the Blind's local chapters is because they're able to help us to be better advocates in that space. Like
Mhm.
we want to be better advocates, but like you said, we're new to this and we
Mhm.
are not the experts and we recognize that. So as much as we can understand what the terminology is, what the priorities are, and how we can use our platform to advocate for those elements, we really do try to do that whenever we're talking about something as small as a crosswalk or
Mhm.
something as big as a federal policy.
Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes just having somebody walk through your shoes,
Hmm.
just taking them out and crossing the street blindfolded. But,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
scary, but that's part of life.
Yeah, and I mean that's
So,
something that we've seen too I do want to highlight. So something that
mhm.
we do sometimes is we do what are known as walk audits, where we take a group of people and we look at different aspects of the built
Yes,
environment.
I
Yeah,
knew about that. Okay.
yeah.
Yes.
And so the the reason why I bring this up is that when we were invited 2 years ago, I think it was, to the Kansas Active Transportation Conference. So basically, bringing folks from across the state to understand what are the priorities for active transportation. How can we address this?
Mhm. Mhm.
One of the things that one of the organizers did was they organized a walk audit of downtown McPherson, Kansas. It's about an hour north of Wichita. It's about 10 to 20,000 people, typical small town.
Mhm.
One of the things they added with that was they added on specific glasses that were taped over so you couldn't
Yes.
see, and
Simulation
mhm,
glasses.
yes, as
Mhm.
well as a cane for
Mhm.
people who are blind.
Yes.
And so you got to experience walking down the street, the hearing the sounds, like really relying on your
Mhm.
other senses, and how unsettling it can be when you have to deal with giant tractor trailers flying down
Mhm.
the street, when there are motorcycles revving up their engine,
Mhm.
and just how overstimulating that can be and how isolating it can feel when you're the only person who is experiencing those challenges.
Yeah. No.
Mhm.
Well said, because I have had many of those experiences, and we won't talk about those. No. Okay. I will tell you this one because it is quite funny. I was very stubborn with my blindness journey.
Mhm.
I didn't want to deal with it, and so I was just trying to survive and go to school, right? Just
Yeah.
blend in, and that wasn't the best choice, but you learn. So, okay, so I'm learning how to use my mobility cane after like several years,
Mhm.
and um my mobility instructor, he's going to laugh at me because I still talk to him, and I'm like uh he tells the story every time. He put blindfolds on me, right? Because
Mhm.
that's what a mobility specialist should do.
Right.
And I was crossing the street with him behind me and using my cane. And it was like a not well used area, but like enough where it'll
Yeah.
make you scared.
Right, right.
I froze in the middle of the sidewalk or crosswalk, and he was laughing at me instead of helping me. He's like, I knew this was gonna happen, Haley.
Yeah.
And then he kind of made traffic, aware of the situation. He's like,
Mhm.
keep walking. And I'm like, oh no, which way?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very scary.
Yeah.
Very scary. And I would not recommend.
No, no, no. But I mean, that sort of experience kind of really reinforces
Hmm.
all the reasons why we need more connected, more accessible communities for everyone.
Hmm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. That was so traumatizing. Okay, let me look at our next questions here. Give me 1 second to get my papers together. Okay. Okay, we've talked a little bit about this, but what do you think needs to be changed in how cities, planners, and policymakers approach accessibility? We have talked about that
Hmm.
throughout, but what would be one thing that you would say, like top of your list, or a couple items?
Empathy.
Everything.
Empathy.
Oh,
Because
empathy.
far too often it is presented as, this is a luxury, or this is something that only a few people will use. And
Hmm.
the problem with that thinking is that, we kind of take our roads and our sidewalks for granted. Like even when they're empty, it's like, well, we shouldn't get rid of them because, someone needs that.
Mm-hmm.
We don't think about that the same when we think about our sidewalks or our trails or bike infrastructure. And I think that it really makes it easy to kind of dismiss that as like it's just something we don't need. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, if we want to be a more accessible, more multimodal city, then we have to invest in everyone's mode of transportation. Like it isn't just for people who drive, it has to be for people who walk, for people who bike, for people who roll, for people who use public transit. And I think if city planners and policymakers were able to understand that perspective, understand what those challenges were, then they would be much less likely to cut that out when the going gets tough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that it's something that you see on city councils across the country is that the people who tend to walk, who tend to ride a bike, who tend to ride a bus,
Mm-hmm.
are the folks who are much more likely to say, we should invest in these things. We should have policies, plans, and projects in place so that we can support those needs.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there are a whole host of things, but I think it all starts from having empathy for your fellow residents.
I do not disagree. And sometimes that is the hardest thing to get across to somebody.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Oh, oh my goodness. I had a question and now I've done forgot it. Okay, this is not on our list of questions. Okay.
All right.
So
Bonus question time.
yeah. A lot of clients have been reaching out about concerns about lack of buses now in Independence area.
Mm-hmm.
What is happening?
Okay.
Break that down for us, please,
Okay.
because
So,
I don't know how to help.
okay. So to answer that question, you really should start at the federal level.
Okay.
So at the federal level, when it comes to transit funding, um, you can the very, very basic way of explaining this is that federal funds can only be used for capital expenses. So I can use it to buy a bus, I can use it to build a bus stop,
Hmm.
but I cannot use them for operations, which means I cannot use federal funds to maintain a bus stop, to fix a bus if it breaks down, or to pay the drivers.
Really?
Nope. That's how federal dollars largely work.
Okay.
So this is where the local comes in.
Mm-hmm.
So groups like the KCATA will contract with cities to provide the services. So you're essentially, when a city contracts the KCATA, you're essentially paying for them to be able to do maintenance, operations, paying their drivers.
Mm-hmm.
And so the problem is that a lot of times cities are paying for their transit operations out of their general fund, which
Okay.
means that you're essentially putting transit up against parks, libraries, police, the things that make a city function.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so what ends up happening, what has been happening as of late, is that the cost of transit has gone up to a point that cities can no longer afford to do it. It's basically like I can either fund transit or I can fund my libraries. I can't do both.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were seeing places like Independence say, well, we'll just get rid of this. And it's not because they don't see the value in transit, it's that they literally can't afford it. So this is actually part and parcel with something that BikeWalkKC has been a little bit involved with, which is that we need a regional transit funding model. So what that would essentially be is that rather than individual municipalities like Independence or Raytown or KCK
Mm-hmm.
paying for transit out of their general fund, you would instead have a regional system where you are expanding who has to pay, but you're also creating a dedicated funding stream for transit.
Right.
So we're working with groups like the Kansas City Regional Transit Alliance to advocate for this. And so we believe that there will be a opportunity to push for this in the next couple of years, including in places like Jackson County.
Okay.
So I would just say that in terms of what people can do, your listeners can do,
Mm-hmm.
two things I would just say is continue to speak up for it here locally,
Mm-hmm.
but when the Jackson County elections come around, this is an opportunity to bring it up for both candidates and incumbents. What are you going to do to support transit?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not because you're trying to do a gotcha. It's not because you're trying to embarrass them. It's because this is dealing with your livelihood.
It's vital.
Right. Like people, like I'm sure you've probably heard these stories too of like people who they lost the bus route and now
Mhm,
they're about to lose their job. They lost
mhm,
the bus route and
mhm,
now they can't get their kids to school. They lost
mhm,
the bus route and now they can't get themselves to school or they can't get to their medical
mhm,
appointments.
mhm.
This is a vital issue and we are not going to fix it by continuing to kick the can down the road. We need a regional funding model and that's something we want to work to address.
I really appreciate you breaking that down because there's a lot of people in our community who rely on the Independence bus line, and
Yeah.
I'm new to this,
Mhm.
so I will send all the questions your way if you're okay with that. I'll be like, "This is the expert."
I will do my best. I will say that I'm not the biggest transit expert, but I know folks who know a lot more than myself, and so that's part of the reason I'm really excited to be working with the KCRTA.
Yeah, no, I can
Mhm.
see that, and it comes through in how you speak about it. You're interested, but
Mhm.
there's more pieces to this puzzle that people have, so
Yes. Yes,
I
indeed.
can appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. Okay. Let's go back to our questions here.
Mhm.
Okay. So skipping down to 13. Okay. We have talked about this a little bit, but what has inspired you to get involved with this work? You mentioned your trip.
Mhm. Yeah. I think
Did it come about before your trip? I mean, did you know that you wanted to be a policy person?
no, no, no. If you told me like 10 years ago, like Michael, you will be a transportation advocate for a living, I probably would have laughed at you. No, no, no. My degree, so my educational
Yeah.
background is I got my bachelor's in political science and international studies with a minor in French.
Oh,
And
good
my
gosh.
yeah. So my plan, I had it all mapped out by the time I was basically a freshman. I wanted to go work as a foreign service officer. I wanted to go work as a
Okay.
foreign service officer in a West African country where they predominantly speak French. Like that was my goal. That was what like
Hmm.
2011, 2012 Michael was like he was on it.
Okay.
So but I had an opportunity to intern at the Kansas legislature during my senior year
Hmm.
and I said, "Hey, I really like this."
Hmm.
And I decided at the end of it, maybe I should stay in the States. And that led to working for the Department of Housing and Urban Development as an intern and some other jobs. And
That's a
um,
tough gig right there for an
yeah,
intern.
hey, I really enjoyed it though, because housing is something that, we all have some of our own connections with. And I, I really wanted to work in housing policy for a while because without getting too much into it, I,
Yeah.
I, I experienced challenges with housing when I was younger. And I being able to make it through no small part because of my parents, I swore to myself that if I could find a way to make it to where someone else didn't have to go through what I went through, then I would want to do that. And so the same thing kind of
Mm,
applies to transportation, that the worst part of my job is having to console the family of someone who has been injured or killed on a street that we knew was unsafe. Like
mhm,
it's a street that, everyone in the businesses along there know that it's unsafe. Residents won't ride or walk along there,
mhm,
and someone gets injured or killed. And it it's something that it eats at me sometimes because 9.5 times out of 10, it's not because we didn't know it was unsafe. It's because we knew it was unsafe and we chose not to do something about
mhm,
it. And that is something that is incredibly difficult to deliver to someone who is having to figure out medical bills, who is having to figure out funeral arrangements. Like, how do you tell someone
right. You
that? Yeah,
kinda just shut down almost.
yeah. So what inspires me and what pushes me forth is knowing that it is not just a frivolous thing. It is literally people's lives. If we
Mhm,
choose not to build a safer community, then that is going to be someone's brother, someone's mother, someone's aunt that we're going to have to put in a hospital or bury tomorrow. And I
mhm.
can't live with that.
Yeah. I don't I don't even know if I could walk into a place every day knowing that this is a dangerous street and what are we doing to fix it, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
That would just be on my brain every day, and I don't know how you do it. I
it,
don't
it
know how you do it.
I find a lot of solace with other advocates,
Mhm,
and I try to instill those values in my daughters. I have two small girls, and I really want them to grow up and recognize that they have agency, that they have an ability to create something better than what they were raised with.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, it's simple as I don't want to get to a point to where my daughters ask me, Dad, what did you do? And I can't give them a good answer. They deserve a good
Right.
answer. And
Right.
so if that means, advocating for policies and sometimes doing that when it's the unpopular thing to do, but it's the right thing to do, then I'll do it
Right.
because I don't want to live with that. So, and I don't think anyone else wants to live with that deep down either.
No.
So,
No.
yeah.
Public opinion is so difficult to get through sometimes. You're like, "Oh, that's nothing. I'll get through that." Ooh. Maybe not.
Right, right. So, hmm
Mm, okay. All right. Let me find my last question here. Oh, yeah. This is a good one. How can our listeners get more involved with Bike Walk KC and
so
support you?
yeah. So shameless plug, BikeWalkKC is a nonprofit. So if you are able to support, we definitely appreciate that.
Mhm.
But if folks are interested, sign up for our mailing list. So our mailing
Okay.
list is how you can get involved with advocacy alerts. We do volunteer events. We have regular events that you can come to,
Mhm, mhm.
where you can find your voice. We also are planning to do later this year advocacy 101 trainings.
Oh my
So
gosh, I love it.
yeah,
You got to
so
swing by.
absolutely.
Okay.
So we'll have information about that I'll share with Haley and please share with your listeners.
Yeah.
But yeah, just follow us on social media. But that's the best way for folks to get involved. Is
Okay.
yeah, just do that.
Um, you forgive me, I did not look at all the details. You sent me something in the emails on the interwebs, and I haven't done the research yet on what
hmm
you sent me. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that was? Do you remember what you sent
I was
me?
gonna say what it is.
I don't remember what it was. Something about getting more involved with the community, maybe.
That might have been something related to the Community Transportation Academy.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, um,
Okay.
but all that's to say, the whole person is very fortunate to have someone like Haley and someone like Matt behind the boards to organize this podcast and bring on these issues. But it's also a good opportunity to get more involved. Like I was explaining to Haley in the break, it is much, much easier to get things done at the local level. So if
Mhm.
10 or 20 of you listeners complain about a sidewalk or a crosswalk to your council member, it is much more likely that they are going to listen to you than a state representative or your federal Congress member. So
Mhm.
it really is about finding out how to plug in locally and
Mhm.
use your voice to advocate at your city hall because that's the place where these changes are going to happen.
Mhm. And advocating in a correct way, because
Yes.
you don't ever want to go in, guns
hmm
blazing or any
Right.
of that, but there is a correct way to do that and to be heard. So,
Yes, and I'll just offer, a few things we tell
mhm.
advocates, and we'll talk about this in the Advocacy 101
Yes.
series, is when you go, make sure that you are clear about your ask. So
Mhm.
if you're delivering testimony, these are some things I give for delivering testimony.
Right, right. Okay.
Um, Tell a story. So a story is what is going to stick with the person. Like they may not remember the numbers, but the
Mhm.
story is like the hook. That
Yes.
is the way, like, I saw this person today and they were talking about this.
Mhm.
You should try to tie it with numbers if you can. So like if you can reference an existing policy or like this is in line with our existing complete streets policy, or there have been 10 people who have been injured along this street so far, that helps to make it real. So
Mhm.
it's not just you experiencing this, it is part of a broader issue that we need to understand. But finish by making your ask.
Okay.
Like, do not finish your remarks without saying, I am asking you to
Mhm.
install a crosswalk. I am asking you to repair the sidewalk so that the decision makers know very clearly
Mhm.
this is what this person wants.
Right. No,
hmm
that's excellent advice. You're right, because the
Yeah.
story hooks it, the numbers make it more real, and then you lead in with your last point of topic.
And don't attack the opposition. Like
Yes.
it is a time suck.
Never.
It will almost always backfire on you and it takes away from your message.
It does.
Yeah,
And your credibility almost in a way.
absolutely. So yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited for this training. Okay. Sign me up. I'm going to sign everybody up in here.
hmm
Okay. I like to ask people one last question. Um, if you could tell people one thing, what would you tell them? Oh, I stumped you on that one a little bit, huh?
A little bit.
I can I can read the body language. And you can tell me to bugger off
Yeah.
with the question.
No. The thing I would tell people is that you are more powerful than you think. I think the thing that people sometimes underestimate is how much power, how much influence your voice has when it comes to advocating for safer streets. And I'll give you an example here to kind of close these things out.
Mhm.
Um, there was a there was an instance where we were working with um, someone who really wanted to get their street fixed, and actually this was Meyer Boulevard actually. And so the woman who was really pushing for this, her name is Nina Whiteside McCord. Shout out to Nina, she's fantastic.
Mhm.
um she said, I've been working, I've been trying to do this, what else do I need to do? And I said, you just have to keep going to the meetings, you have to make sure that they see you.
Mhm.
And she's been doing that, and we were able to work with her on a walk audit along Meyer Boulevard, and she was able to use that information to ultimately push for raised crosswalks in front of the Kaufman School. That means that it's not only safer for her to cross the street, but it means that there's now a safer route for kids to get to and from the school.
Mhm.
And that's powerful. So what I want people to understand is that you you are not weak, you are not lesser than because you want safer streets. But you have to speak up. So I just ask that if this podcast is something that's spoken to you, if this issue is something that matters to you, please join the whole person and join Bike Walk KC in advocating for safer streets. Because
Mhm.
one thing I tell folks is that advocacy is a team sport. Nothing
Mhm.
happens because of me, it happens because of we. And
Mhm.
if we are serious about creating a truly accessible, connected, multimodal community for ourselves and our neighbors, it means that we all have to advocate for it.
Oh yeah, I 100% agree. You just never know who can help in what way.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh. Well,
absolutely.
this has been amazing. And I just am so excited to talk with you about this because you bring such an energy to this topic that most people would be like, no, I'm out. But your passion for it really comes through and it makes me want to be more um, around for these events and make sure that my voice is heard. So thank you.
Of
I really
course.
appreciate that because that's a tough thing to get across to people sometimes. So
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Like I said,
yeah,
I really appreciate the work that the whole person does, and Bike Walk KC is thankful to count the whole person as one of the partners we work with locally.
we love working with you, and we're gonna
Yeah,
do much more things in the future. So
excellent. I'm looking
looking.
forward to it.
I was just gonna say that. Yeah, that was a good high five too. I'm so proud of us. Um, Send us any updates. You are more than welcome to come back at any time and tell us any updates that you would like.
Of course.
Keep us all current and everything. We need that,
Yes.
and just let us know what we can do to help.
Of course.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you. Thank
Mhm.
you, everyone, for joining us today. Have a good rest of the day. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our podcast. Today, I'm going to go through some of the monthly events that the whole person hosts. Again, my name is Haley Korf. I am your vision impaired host today, so bear with me. I've got a lot of notes here, okay? All right, the first event is Getting Social. It's the first Friday of every month. The next event is Time to Spare, and that is the third Wednesday of every month. That is our accessible bowling open to everyone who has a disability. The next event is Mind's Eye View, and that is the first Monday of every month. That is more geared towards people who are vision impaired or blind to get together and talk about some of the difficulties. Then after that, we have our DIY skills for young adults, age range 18 through 24, and that is the last Wednesday of every month. Brain Injury Peer Support Group, the second Thursday of every month. And then Tech Talk, the second Monday of the month. And that is also geared towards people who are vision impaired or blind to get together and talk a little bit more about accessibility issues. If you have any more questions, feel free to look it up at thewholeperson.org. And again, please join us for any event at any time. Thank you.